So I just come back from India. This is my fourth trip to India, which some people say is not so many, some people say it's many. Depends on your perspective, I suppose. And it's interesting because in the suttas, in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the Buddha says that it's good to visit what is now called the holy places in India. And these, of course, are the four main sites of the Buddha. He specifically says the place he was born, the place he reached awakening, the place where he started the Dhamma by teaching the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta, the setting in motion the wheel of the Dhamma, and then the place where he passed away. And so these are kind of the four holy places. Of course, there are many other places in India that are also very interesting, and maybe I'll have a chance to talk about those few places. I always love, we have an itinerary, we go to India, it's kind of nice itinerary set up by these people who organize trips and what have you. And then, of course, if you are a monk, you have your own ideas, So you say, no, that's not good. We don't go there. We go here instead. What do you mean here instead? Where is that? I've never been there before. And so they get really confused. They have to reorganize everything for you. But I was very impressed by them. They were very flexible, and they would always rearrange things. And in the last kind of, not last, like the last second usually. So that was great. So we went kind of a bit out of the way. And sometimes when you go to India these days, you have to go a little bit out of the way because the actual holy sites, the four places the Buddha suggested we should go to, they are so busy. I felt more like Disney World than it felt like a holy place sometimes. There's so many things going on, so many rituals, so much chanting. There's one group chanting over another group, drowning each other out, And I thought I was going to be very smart and come first thing in the morning, like 5 a.m., Nola, 5 a.m. already, full chanting, everything happening already at 5 a.m. in the morning. You queue up to get in early. It doesn't really make any difference whatsoever. But the one thing I did get to do, though, because I queued up very early at Bodh Gaya, I was able to sit completely next to the Bodhi tree, which is kind of nice. So I was like almost the number one through the door at Bodh Gaya. So because of that, I think that when the Buddha talked about going to visit the holy places, I think very often his idea was that you go to places that have some of that feeling, some of the vibe, some of the juju that they had at the time of the Buddha. In other words, a place that gives a feeling of peace, a feeling of benevolence, a feeling of profundity. These things that the Buddha is known for. You go there and you feel those things. And I don't know if the Buddha would have recommended those places anymore, because you don't get that. Very hard to get your mind into that feeling. And so I prefer some of the so-called less holy places because they are far away. They're out of the kind of beaten path, or whatever you call it. And actually they have some of that sense of peace and quiet. And here, actually, we have some of that peace and quiet, right here. And so sometimes you are better off being in a faraway land like Australia than you are in being in the kind of middle land of the Ganges plain. So, but why did the Buddha recommend us to go on these pilgrimages? And if you haven't been, I would really recommend you to go if you have a chance. How many here have been to pilgrimage to India? Wow, there's a lot of you. Okay, so only a few. Deepika have been to pilgrimage to India? No? Not yet. Okay, good. So this is, okay, I'm going to sell it to you now. We'll see what happens. So it is kind of worthwhile, even though some of the places are quite a little bit noisy and busy and all these kind of things, especially if you have a chance to get out of the beaten track a little bit and see some of the faraway places that have some of that kind of same, maybe original feel. Gidjakuta, the Vulture's Peak, is beautiful. We went there, really, really beautiful, peaceful. We went there early in the morning before dawn, really nice. A bit cold, but very nice. We went to some other faraway places as well, like Gurpa. Anyone heard of Gurpa before? No, not heard of Gurpa? Okay. So Gurpa is the place where Mahakassapa is supposed to have passed away. And according to the legend, this is mostly legend, I don't think this is actually what happened, but according to the legend, when he died, he was swallowed up by the mountain. And now he's sitting inside the mountain, waiting for the Buddha Maitreya to arise. And when the Buddha Maitreya arises, he will come out of the mountain. And what he will do, and this is the interesting part, because Kassapa was the only monk to exchange robes with the Buddha. That's actually in the suttas, right? So he has the Buddha's robe. And so he's waiting inside the mountain with the Buddha's robe to hand it on to the next Buddha. Yeah, hand it on to the next Buddha. That's kind of the story here. It's not found in Pali sources, but found in some of the other sources of Buddhism. And so that's kind of, it's almost like you are keeping a transmission going, from almost like from one Buddha to the next one, which, yes, kind of like a lineage, even though I'm not sure if there is a proper lineage, that's kind of what they are sort of purporting to do here. So I went to those places, and we went to a few places that the guides had never even heard of. So I said, let's go there, because if you haven't heard of it, there is probably a few people there. Yeah, so it's a good place to go. That's kind of how we're working with these things. But one of the interesting things about all of this is, why did the Buddha say we should go to these places? And what the Buddha says, hello, welcome. Yeah, there will be a talk 8:30 every day. So yeah, so this is news for everyone. But now you know the news. It becomes old very quickly here. So he said that we should do this because he says that when you go to these places, it gives rise to Sangvejaniya. And this word Sangvejaniya is kind of interesting. The way it is translated by Bhante Sujato is as inspiration. But it doesn't have to be translated like that. Sangvejaniya is related to the word Veda or Ved, which also is related to Sangvega. And Sangvega means like urgency, right? It's kind of, wow, you feel this kind of sense of, wow, I got to get going. Now is the opportunity. If I wait, who knows what's going to happen. And so it has this kind of dual meaning of urgency and emotional kind of uplift, in being inspired. And these two feelings are very closely related to each other, because you feel inspired. Why? Well, because you understand the Dhamma. It's like, wow, this is true. And then because you understand it, and because you know it is true, you know that you have to act on it. And that is a sense of urgency. Now is the time to act. And so it has both of these sides. And it relates also very nicely to another teaching, which I think is in here. I can't remember anymore what teachings are in here, but I think pretty sure it is in here. The Mahanama Sutta is in here, isn't it? Yeah, there it is. I've seen it already. Okay, Mahanama Sutta. So in the don't need to look at it. In the Mahanama Sutta, it talks about how you get inspired from the 6 recollections. These are the anusatis, the 6 recollections. And of course, the first of the 6 is the recollection of the Buddha. That's number 1. And when you, according to that formula, you recall the Buddha in the ordinary way, itipiso bhagava arahang samma sambuddho, etc. And when you do that, what happens? Well, what happens is that the defilements decline, the defilements go away. And then when the defilements kind of go away, the mind becomes straight, as it says there, ujju. Straight. Bhante Sujato has a weird translation. I shouldn't say that. Well, you're all Bhante Sujato disciples, so I shouldn't say that. But it's a word I can't remember. Unswerving is his word, which is a bit like straight. Yes, swerving is like this. So if you're unswerving, you're going straight. So similar kind of idea. So the mind becomes straight. And then when the mind becomes straight, you gain 2 things. You gain the Atta Veda and the Dhamma Veda. And that word Veda there, in Atta Veda, Dhamma Veda, is the same word as you see in that sutta where the Buddha, in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, about the inspiration you gain at the holy sites in India. Sangvejaniya in Veda. It may not sound like the same word, but actually it is. The root is the same. It's the root vid, which you also find in Vijjati, the Te Vijja and these kind of things. And so in this Mahanama Sutta, the word Veda has this double meaning again. This double meaning, on the one hand, you understand things like Vijjati, the 3 the three insights. This is how Ajahn Brahmali likes to translate. I think it's a really nice translation called the three insights. Yeah, rebirth, karma, and awakening experience. Because these are the real insights in Buddhism. And so the Tevijja, that means understanding or knowledge. And on the other hand, Veda is also related to Vedana, which is like feeling, experience and feeling. And when you combine the idea of feeling, especially in the sense of emotion, which is a little bit maybe on the side of what Vedana means, but maybe not. I was just reflecting this morning, what does Vedana actually mean? And the way Vedana is defined, of course, in the sutras, it is defined as something having a positive or negative or neutral experience. You like it, you dislike it, or neutral. But that's just the definition in the sutras. That doesn't mean that is what the word actually means, because what the word means depends on the culture at that time, what existed prior to Buddhism, and the culture at large. This is just the Buddhist definition. The Buddha, explains it in this particular way here. And so the word Vedana is more broad, like experience, patti sang vedati, or something like that. Mine is a bit blurred, unfortunately, but anyway, we'll see what happens. And so, you have this kind of word basically means understanding and emotion, or understanding and experience. And those two things combined in English, if you understand something, and that understanding gives rise to a positive emotion that makes you want to act on it, that is what we mean by inspiration very often. You are inspired. There's a feeling that goes with that. There's an understanding that goes with that. And it motivates you to act. You want to do something. That is the samvega. You feel the urgency. All of these things coming together in this word. And so what this means when we go to the holy sites in India, we are essentially doing the same thing as you find in the Mahanama Sutta. That's what we're doing here. We are, in a sense, we are recollecting the Buddha, and through recollecting the Buddha, that's what you do when you go to those holy places, but through that recollection of the Buddha, you are then giving rise to this inspiration, which then becomes the source, the foundation for the whole path of meditation, as it is explained in the Mahanama Sutta and so many other places. And so that is what going to India is about. Understanding the Buddha, getting inspired by the Buddha. And if you get inspired by the Buddha, well, then you're also inspired by the Dhamma, because that is the outcome of the Buddha, is the Dhamma. And the outcome of the Dhamma and the Buddha is the Sangha. You're inspired by that. Then we get inspired by the training. The training is what we all have in common. All of these things are so closely related to each other. And so this is kind of the idea of pilgrimage. And also it is the idea, in large part, of what we're doing on the meditation retreat. Because you have to find that inspiration, you have to find that source of joy and uplift that makes meditation possible. Meditation without that source of joy, without the source of uplift, can be very dry and very kind of, you wonder why you're doing it, or you get a bit peaceful and then you whatever. But that joy is what really gives the oomph to the meditation practice. And so this is what we're trying to do here, and it is interesting that it's actually related to what we were doing in India as well, going on this tour. And just to finish off the sales pitch for India, the nice thing about going there is that you actually start to feel a connection to the Buddha, to the historical Buddha, in a way that you haven't done before. Because okay, the Buddha walked here. What does it mean if the Buddha walked here? Well, it means he must have been a human being. You read the sutras, you think, is it a fairy tale? Is it real? When you go to India, it starts to become real. When you hear about the Buddhas, everyone in the world loves psychic powers and flying through the air, that kind of stuff. But that removes us from the Buddha, because the Buddha becomes other. But when you go to India, the focus is on someone who lived in this area, is a human being. He's one of us. This is kind of the feel you get when you're there. This is the Gijjakuta, the Vulture's Peak. And it is a place, a physical place, where the Buddha was teaching, where the Buddha was kind of hanging out, if you like, because it was nice and peaceful. Just below the Vulture Peak, you have what is called the Boar's Cave, the Sukkara Katta, and that is where Venerable Sariputta became enlightened according to the story, right? And you can go there now, you can sit there. And when we were there just now, we did our procedure. Every uposatha, you have to do the procedure where you do the patimokkha if you are a sangha. We were not a sangha, we were only 3 monks. So we do what is called the parisuddhi, it's declaring purity, essentially. You did that in the place where Venerable Sariputta was awakened. It's like, oh, it's almost kind of, it's kind of scary. Am I pure enough to be here? That's kind of sometimes a feeling you have. So this is extraordinary. And you see, kind of one of the things I did when I was there, sometimes I like just to go for myself a little bit and kind of leaving the whole group, to their own devices. And sometimes saying, "Oh, where are you going?" And I'm going to, "Okay, see you later," and just disappear. That's kind of nice. It's a bit irresponsible, but I'd like to be a little bit irresponsible. Too much responsibility is like a burden. And so I kind of walked over myself. This was in Kushinara, where the Buddha passed away. And so I walked kind of outside of this place we were, what was that place again we were? That was the stupa where the ashes of the Buddha were supposed to have been interred after his passing away. Then he was cremated. There was a cremation stupa, that's right, the cremation stupa for the Buddha. So I walked kind of out, and you walk kind of through a couple of streets. And then I walked to the river. There was a river just there. And so I walked along this river. And I wasn't entirely sure which river it was, but I was following along. And as you follow along, it was quite peaceful. There was trees there. I walked on, there was a few fields. There were some people, some of them incredibly poor, living in this kind of shanty town, kind of plastic, thing. And then I walked a bit further, and I came to a bridge that went across the river. And so I went up on this bridge. You have to be very careful in India when you get into the roads, because the roads in India are the most crazy roads in the whole world. There's like ox carts and horses and pedestrians and motorcycles and cars and trucks and buses. And it's not as if they drive in nice lanes. Everyone drives everywhere. Yeah, so it's like you have to look both ways all the time, because you have no idea where the traffic is going to come from. So if you follow the kind of ordinary upbringing, so first you look, First you look right, then you look left or whatever. In India, always look both left and right at all times, because you have no idea where the traffic is going to come from. And so I did that, and so I was careful crossing the road. And then I had a look, and there was a sign there, a sign which had the name of the river, and it was called the Hiranyavati River. And of course, the Hiranyavati, if you know the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, that is exactly the name you find in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. So it's like stepping into history here. It's like you're walking into the, into the suttas almost. And as soon as I saw that name, I knew this is the river that the Buddha crossed just before he passed away. Yeah, it's right there in the suttas. He crosses this river as a suitable ford, and then he carries on to the Sala tree grove of the Mallas, which is like 1 kilometer further down. When you're there, you know exactly how far it is because you've been there. You walk the path. And so you can almost like you can see the Buddha coming across and then walking and then laying down between the 2 sal trees. Those sal trees are obviously no longer there, but there's still lots of sal trees in the area, so you can see the trees and everything here. And it just, wow, this is what's going on here. Yeah, and the thing becomes so vivid. It becomes so clear all of a sudden. And it's like that again and again and again. Yeah, you see the mountains, you see the hills, you see the hot springs. The Tapodarama is a hot spring park. Tapoda is like hot water, Arama park. And in the suttas, the monks would go there to bathe. There's a nice story in the suttas about this. The story is that, I'm not sure if it's nice, but it's a story anyway. So the monks are all bathing in the hot springs at the Tapodarama, and they're kind of bathing and washing and having a good time. And then the king comes, King Bimbisara comes, and King Bimbisara wants to have a bath. It's kind of interesting. The king has a bath in the hot springs. Isn't that kind of cool? Yeah, so this is outside of the city. So the king wants to have a bath. And then the monks kind of just keep on bathing, and the king waits and waits and waits, and the monks keep on bathing, and the king waits. And then eventually it gets really late before the king gets to have his bath. And by the time he's finished his bath, the gates of the city have closed, so we can't get back into the city again. It's kind of an amazing story, because he's supposed to be the king, right? You wonder what kind of king it is. He can't even get back into his own city. You would have thought he had some guard or someone to open the door for him or whatever, but no, he has to kind of sleep outside of the city. And so in the morning, then his makeup or whatever is kind of all over, smeared all over, like you've slept, whatever that is. So then he somehow he goes to see the Buddha, because the Buddha is living in the bamboo park, and the bamboo park is just next door to the hot springs. And so he goes, and the Buddha says, "Oh yeah, you know what's wrong with you? The makeup is all over the place. You don't look too good. What's going on?" And he says, "Oh yeah, the monks kind of bathed for so long that I wasn't able to get back into the city." Yeah, kind of an extraordinary story. And then the Buddha lays down the rules. This is one of the monks' rules. You can only bathe once a fortnight. That's one of the rules for the monks. So that's actually a rule, right? This is kind of one of those amazing rules. So if we smell a bit, don't be surprised. Yeah. No, it's only that rule only applies for the Ganges region. So it doesn't actually apply in Australia. It doesn't apply outside of the Ganges region. So that's why hopefully we don't smell too much. And also there are lots of exemptions. Like if you travel and these kind of things, you don't have to keep them. But there it is. The hot spring is there. And when you go to the hot springs today, the same hot springs, the Indians are still bathing in exactly the same hot springs to the present day. Now there's a bit more fancy. There's a bit of tiles, and there's kind of a Hindu shrine there. There's Hindu temples absolutely everywhere, and they usually build them on top of the Buddhist temples just to make sure. And so it's a bit more made up, but there they are, bathing in the same hot springs, right? It's really extraordinary, because again, the suttas and the reality on the ground is basically exactly the same. And so you do feel a different sense of the Buddha when you go there, and this is what is so wonderful. And so this is one of the things I will be talking about during this retreat, is how to kind of approach the Buddha, and how to see if you can get that connection with the Buddha in a different way, and see if that will make that work. So, because that is one of the things that actually is necessary for the meditation really to take hold and to work properly. So, let us talk a little bit about meditation practice, just to give you a little bit of an introduction today. So I've now been talking about the idea of joy, coming out of like Buddha Nusati. But there's three things that I would like to emphasize today concerning meditation. And the first one, of course, is the idea of letting go. Letting go is such an important part of the path of meditation. Everyone has heard this word, and I want to discuss a little bit what it actually means, because often it's hard to really grasp what it means to let go. We try, but we don't really get it right. The second one is the idea of enjoying the meditation, and this is related to just what I was talking about now, and many other things as well. So important to enjoy it. If you don't enjoy it, it's not going to work. And the third one is the idea of mindfulness, which again obviously is core part of meditation practice. So I want to focus on these three things. So let's start with the idea of letting go. So letting go it sounds a bit, very often you hear people saying, but how do you do it? And then when you ask people, how do you do it? Very often they don't really have a good reply, how to let go, It just kind of happens. You just do it, and eventually kind of letting go happens, and you feel really chilled afterwards, and you go into deep meditation or whatever. But how do you actually do it? What does it actually mean to let go? And one of the ways of thinking about meditation, instead of thinking of it as letting go, because letting go sounds like you are doing something. I am letting go. And of course, the problem, you are doing the letting go. You're not actually really letting go anymore, because letting go is really happens when you kind of get out of the way and you kind of release something. As long as we are here, we tend to want to control. That's kind of the idea of the self. The sense of self is a very important part of it is the sense of the controller who wants to be in charge of things in the world. And so as long as you are letting go, well, actually, that is already problematic. And so another way of thinking about it, think of it instead of as letting be. Letting be just means allowing things to be the way they are, not trying to change, not trying to have things or be in a different way. Okay, this is good enough, yeah? I'm sitting down, my mind is a bit tired, I just came on this plane from Singapore, and then I came from India just before that, and even in Singapore I was really busy giving talks, yeah? Once you become a monk, it's like one talk after the other, which is nice. It's a wonderful thing to be able to give talks, because it's such a beautiful thing to share with the world, the Dhamma. So it's actually a very privileged position to be in, to be honest. And so it's great. But still, sometimes it can get too much, even with talks, to be honest. So, you come and you are maybe tired, and maybe your mind, and this morning my mind was all over the place, for example. And, then you just allow it to be. Okay, so you don't really try to do anything with it. You don't try to find a way out of it, because sometimes there may not be a way out of it. And very often the way out of it is just to sit back and wait and allow kind of the process to more or less happen by itself. Just maybe kind of slightly nudge the mind in the right direction. Remind yourself that, wow, this is so nice and beautiful place, let me just enjoy the place, something like that. And then when you do that, you just stay in the present and you enjoy whatever is there. So letting be is often a better way of thinking about things than letting go, because it means there is a flow. You go with that flow. You allow kind of the path to unfold by itself, instead of you trying to force the path to unfold, in a sense. So sit back and wait and just enjoy what is going on. Ajahn Brahmali used to say this to me all the time when I was kind of a baby monk. Sometimes I still feel like a baby monk, but anyway, whatever. I guess I don't have an excuse. I've been a monk for 30 years, so I guess. But, you're always a baby in one sense, I think. You never really... Does anyone here feel like they have really grown up? I never felt like I grew up. It never happens. You have this idea in your head what it means to grow up. It never actually happens. You kind of you remain the same person. But anyway, and so you kind of just go with that flow. You allow things to be. You go along. And when Ajahn Brahmali talked to me about this, he would say, okay, I would say to him, oh, it's not really happening. Yeah, I'm trying to go with the flow. Nothing is happening. What should I do? And he only had one answer in the early days, and that was, sit longer. That was the only answer, sit longer. That was kind of his teaching in the early days. And it took me a while to really understand what was going on, because, and I had to discuss it with other people as well to really understand it. But once you understand it, actually it makes really good sense. And the idea is that when you have a degree of mindfulness, and that is really the critical thing, you have to have a degree of mindfulness. If you have a fair amount of mindfulness, and that is really what we need to establish in the beginning, when you have that mindfulness, all you really have to do is wait with that mindfulness. And that mindfulness has the power that as you wait, things gradually, even though there's a bit of turmoil in the mind, there's things going on, but because you have a degree of mindfulness, that turmoil gradually decreases as you stay with it. So you stay with the kind of the tiredness, you stay with the restlessness, you stay with all the thinking mind. But because you are staying with it, it is the power of mindfulness. That power in its own right is sufficient for these things gradually to calm down and gradually to disappear. And that is the amazing thing. And so that is really what it means, often to meditate. It means just wait. It means just be patient, just be present, just be aware and allow things to calm down almost entirely on their own. So that is kind of the idea here. So how do we do this? And a big problem very often in meditation, again, this is similar to the idea of letting go. Okay, I must let go. And because you must let go, you try to do the meditation. And so what does it mean not to do the meditation? How can we get out of the habit of doing everything? How can we get into the habit of just being aware, just being present without doing anything? And there's a few tricks that you can do to do this. And one of the ways that I, kind of very simple ways that I like to think about this, it is like when you are, say that you have been to work or wherever you have been, and you are kind of maybe tired after a long day, and you come back home, and you just want to relax. So what do you do when you want to relax after a long day? Well, you may go to your favorite chair, your armchair, or maybe you lie down on your bed maybe for a short time just to kind of get a breather, whatever it is. And so what do you do when you do that? Well, you don't do anything, right? That's the whole point. You just lie there and you allow kind of the turmoil of the mind just to kind of go through, and then after a while, it calms down a little bit. And that's kind of what this is about. The meditation is a similar kind of thing here. You allow things to be here. You don't do anything. You're sitting in that armchair. You're just resting. You're just relaxing. And because, hopefully, you have a little bit of mindfulness, don't try to mindfulness, just there because you have developed in the past, then gradually it calms down. And gradually the mind gains that clarity, which mindfulness really is all about. This is kind of the idea here. So you're just sitting in that armchair, waiting for things to calm down, and sitting in an armchair when you come home from work and you're tired. Well, actually, you don't really do anything at all. You just enjoy, you just relax, you're just there. Or it can be something like sitting back and watching something beautiful, watching a thing like a sunset, not a movie because you get far too involved, but say something like a sunset. Okay, a sunset is a sensory thing, so it's part of the five sense world, and so it is maybe not quite right for meditation, but it's close enough. And so when you are sitting back and watching a sunset, what is actually going on? Well, what is going on is that, first of all, you don't try very hard to watch the sunset. It's not like, watch. You're not kind of like that. That destroys the whole experience. It's the exact opposite. You are sitting back, and just enjoying sitting back. And so you are not doing very much. You're just enjoying the experience, number one. Number two, because it is a sunset, it is something that is normally quite attractive. Because it's attractive, your mind goes towards it, even though you may not be trying to do it, or even though hopefully not trying very hard. So it gives you this double idea of what meditation is about. It is about the idea of letting be or letting go, not doing it, at the same time being attracted to the meditation object, and understanding, and then for that reason staying with the object of meditation. But the final way, which I would recommend you to use, at least occasionally, when it comes to the idea of meditation, what really is close to meditation, is the idea of dying. Dying is very similar to meditation. Some people get freaked out when I say that, but it's okay. So you can die a little bit on this retreat. So meditation is like dying. Dying is like meditation. And so the idea here has a double benefit. First of all, instead of waiting till you actually die and using that power of that moment, you bring it into the present and you use it now, instead of waiting till the time actually comes. And so you can use that very special moment of your life to help you calm you down and to make meditation more powerful. But it also prepares you for death itself, because you have an idea what's going to happen. Your mind has kind of gone through the stages, and so you know what dying is about a little bit. So it has this double benefit. And so what is that happens when you contemplate death? Well, if you contemplate death in the right way, two things usually happen. Number one is that you let go. Why? Because you have no choice. Now you die, you're going to have to let go whether you want or not. And so if you are ready, the mind will let go because it knows it has to let go. And so you bring that perception of dying into the present, and that helps you then to let go here and now. And if you are skilled with this kind of perception, then all you really have to do is incline your mind towards dying, and you feel more peaceful almost straight away, because you're going to die. What am I going to hold on to in this life if I'm going to die? Nothing in this life is really all that important. It is incredibly temporary. Even if you're going to be here for a few more years or a few more decades, which is highly uncertain, you have no idea when you're going to die. Even the youngest among us have no idea when you're going to die. So this is the reality of things. So you have to be ready now anyway. If not ready now, who knows when? You're never going to be ready, probably. But so you understand, actually, there is nothing much to hold on to in this life. And because there's nothing much to hold on to, then the mind kind of lets go almost automatically. Yeah, it just lets go. And so mind lets go, and then very often the mindfulness arises as a consequence. And so this is the beautiful thing about death contemplation. You let go and you become mindful. You gain a degree of clarity here. Clarity because when you let go, the defilements also die down and basically disappear also. And so death and meditation is very, very similar here. Yeah, then you're using that to calm yourself down. Then you can move on to the breath, or wait for the breath to arise, or however you want to look at it, and then the meditation can take off from that. So death contemplation giving rise to meditation. And the opposite is also true. Yeah, when eventually then your time is up and you're going to have to die, well then you're ready here, and you can actually use the meditation on the breath or whatever to kind of help you to go through that process at the same time. So death contemplation can be very useful. I will talk more about this later on because it is a very beautiful subject, and done rightly, it will be I can assure you, it will be very enjoyable to do death contemplation. So this is the idea of just letting go. Yeah, this is kind of the first idea. Then there is the idea of enjoying what we're doing. Please enjoy the meditation. Please don't force yourself. Don't, of course, expect a little bit of pain, because a little bit of pain, a little bit of problems, a little bit of issues, a little bit of thoughts we don't really want to have. Of course, these things are going to happen. This is part of life. But don't exaggerate these things. Don't make them worse than they actually are by forcing yourself to sit in a certain posture or forcing yourself to sit for a certain period of time. Move if it gets too bad. And a nice way of thinking about it, especially if it is pain in the body, is that once it starts to become a little bit obsessive and the mind can't really let go of the pain anymore, that is usually the right time to change your posture. And so if it kind of stays, and after not very long, I would, after a minute or two, okay, change your posture, because this is not going to go. And then you can use whatever posture you want. You can lean against the wall, you can get up and do some walking meditation, you can stretch out your legs, or just move a little bit, or whatever it is, use another cushion. If you're only using 2 cushions, use 3. And sometimes on retreats, I don't know if you, not here actually, people don't have so many cushions. Wow, okay, amazing. Some of those retreats I've seen in Perth, there's like cushions all the way around, and then teddy bears on top of the cushions, and it's like this kind of, it's kind of nice. And that's perfectly okay. Please use as many cushions as you like. It doesn't really matter. This is not a competition in who can use the least cushions. So please do that. So what matters is to be at ease, to enjoy what you're doing. So the first thing is then not to go with have any pain in the body. The second thing is to avoid destructive emotions, especially things like anger and ill will. Really, really important not to have that on a retreat like this. And one of the kind of best ways of avoiding that, it's kind of hard when we live together, a group of people, we're very close. It can be easy sometimes to get a bit irritated because someone does exactly what they should know better, right? But of course they don't know, but that's the whole point. So don't expect other people to see the world like you see the world. They will not. And this is what causes so much disharmony in the world, that we see the world in different ways. So don't expect other people to understand the obvious. They will not understand the obvious. This is kind of the problem with the world. And so because of that, have a lot of metta and compassion for the people around you. Understand that the people who come on a retreat like this are good people. No one would come on this kind of retreat unless they were good people. Not only good in a superficial way, but in a very profound sense. Everyone who is here is someone who is really trying to do something profound with their life, change their attitude, change their way of thinking, kind of taking their life in a new direction, all of these kind of things. There's something very worthy of respect of everyone who is here on this retreat. And so if you feel that, there is a kind of foundation, a little bit of irritation of what's coming up, always remind yourself of this. And remember that all of these little things, they are just superficial stuff. They're kind of really irrelevant in the larger picture. The larger picture is that everyone here is worthy of respect. That is the most important point. And as long as you can remember that, you will not have any ill will on this retreat. And then you can kind of look at your fellow retreatants here, and you can look at them with, yay, how lucky I am to have retreatants like this in my vicinity. Wow, so fortunate. And I will come back to this later on, because that's actually, again, a quote from the suttas. Yeah, wow, so fortunate. That's a direct quote from the suttas. Yeah. So this is, so enjoy yourself. And as you get the foundation right, you avoid the kind of trap of the negativity and of the defilements, and you avoid the trap of causing too much pain for yourself. The next step is actually to feel some positive emotions. And one of the things I'm going to focus on here is also going to be how to do that, how to give rise to positive emotions. The idea of feeling a sense of gratitude for being here, the idea of having an appreciation for your own conduct, the idea of recollecting the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, which we have talked about already. All of these things we're going to talk about. So, letting go or letting be, enjoying the retreat, and then the last one is the mindfulness. And the mindfulness really emerges out of the two previous ones. It is almost an automatic thing. If you let things be, and if you enjoy what is here, and then you just wait, and maybe you incline or you nudge the mind towards enjoying a little bit by recalling a little bit in the right way, a very gentle nudging of the mind, then gradually mindfulness will arise. This is just the nature of the mind, if the mind has that foundation in place. And so gradually the mindfulness will arise. And as the mindfulness arises, there comes a point when kind of the breath comes into focus. And this is this beautiful idea that I learned from Ajahn Brahmali. Instead of you going to the breath, you wait for the breath to come to you. Because if you go to the breath, again, it has a little bit this idea of controlling. It's a bit like you are in charge. You can make the meditation work. And that is always a dangerous idea. But if you instead are the passive receiver and the breath comes to you, well, then you're not doing anything. And then it is easy. It is relaxing. The breath comes. Wow, now the breath is so nice. And then you hang out with the breath. It's more like hanging out with a friend. And the friend, of course, we don't want to control our friends. Or ideally, we shouldn't want to control our friends. So the friend is just there. And we hang out with a friend. And the breath is someone you really kind of the good old friend who has kept you alive all of this time. Welcome, friend. Wow, so nice to be with you. Then you enjoy the breath. But to be able to enjoy the breath, it has to be easy. It cannot be something that you force. Because the moment you force the breath very often becomes unpleasant. So you just have to allow it to be. Wait for the breath to come. During this whole process, while you are kind of just allowing the mind to become mindful while you're waiting, the breath will sometimes be there, because the breath is just a natural part of what's going on, obviously. But don't worry about it if it is there. Don't focus it, don't try not to focus it. Just kind of allow it to be on the side, not worrying about it. Don't grasp the breath straight away. Wait for the mind to reach a certain degree of clarity, and you really have to figure this out for yourself when you feel the clarity is there. Then when the clarity is there and the breath really manifests in a kind of clear way, then the mindfulness of breathing almost happens naturally by itself. Never hold on to it, never grasp it, never try to kind of think that you are in charge of the breath. And then this whole sequence kind of, grows quite organically, as they say. The organic process, it just kind of grows and kind of sometimes a bit this way, a bit that way. Like, plants grow organically. It's a bit random. You don't know exactly what's going to happen. Doesn't matter. Don't need to know what's going to happen. All you know is that the general trend is heading in the right way. And then you're going to enjoy this retreat. That's really what that's kind of my introduction of meditation for you. Okay, everyone, so that's it for this morning. So please carry on, enjoy yourself, have lunch at 11, and then we'll see you back again here.